Today we are in the Guadalupe Mountains, home to the highest peak in Texas.
Hi, I'm Scott Marthaler. Welcome to another episode of Rooftops of America. Today, we're in Guadalupe Mountains National Park and headed up to the highest point in the Lone Star State.
Located in the far west of Texas in Culberson County, Guadalupe Peak is part of the Guadalupe Mountains that rise above the surrounding desert. The peak and the mountains are named after a Spanish title for the Virgin Mary. The range runs northeast over 60 miles from Texas into New Mexico.
This peak lies in the Chihuahuan Desert, which starts in Arizona and runs across New Mexico and West Texas and finishes out on the Mexican Plateau. From a geographical standpoint, it's surprisingly young, only 8,000 years old.
It is the largest hot desert in North America and is one of the most biologically diverse in the world, though the ecosystem is threatened by urban encroachment and overgrazing.
While this is desert now, that wasn't always the case. At several times in this region's history, this area was covered by water, and in fact, those ancient seas are responsible for how the area looks today.
Around 250 million years ago, the Ouachita Mountains in modern-day Arkansas and Oklahoma were uplifted, and the height of those peaks at their pinnacle caused the precipitation on the windward side to form a large, shallow body of water that is now known as the Delaware Sea.
The seawater and the remains of the marine life created the limestone reef. Now, over time, it solidified into a hard, durable formation and grew to a thickness of several hundred feet. Eventually, the sea would drain away, and the reef would be covered by sediment.
This wouldn't be the only time this place was covered by water. It was also submerged 90 million years ago, when most of the middle of North America was covered by what was known as the Western Interior Seaway.
Fast forward to 20 million years ago, when compression and tectonic activity uplifted this entire region. The softer soil was stripped away by wind and water, exposing the reef once again, which was much more resistant to erosion.
When you hike up this mountain, you are quite literally walking past the remnants of the ocean floor, and one of the world's finest examples of an ancient barrier reef.
When the Western Interior Seaway drained, this area evolved, first into marshlands, then grasslands. With the rise of the Rocky Mountains and the Sierra Madres in the west, a rain shadow effect was created, and desertification soon began, changing this area once again into the arid climate of today.
In the current era, humans have been living in this area for millennia. Ancient pictographs and cooking pits have been dated to over 12,000 years old.
This region has a very colorful history. The area beyond the Pecos River was considered dangerous territory. Even today, it's remote and isolated, a real-life Wild West. When the Spanish showed up in the 16th century, they were the first Westerners to tread through here. The dominant nation at the time was the Apache. They called themselves Shisende, meaning people of the mountains, and to them, this area was sacred ground.
The Westerners called them Mescaleros, due to the tribe's use of mescal agave as a staple food source. The Spanish never made any effort to settle the mountains, though they did leave a lasting impact, having introduced horses to the continent, which would prove beneficial to the Apache.
In the 1800s, American settlers and explorers started heading this way, towards Paso del Norte, what is now the modern-day cities of El Paso and Ciudad Juarez. This westward expansion would only increase the turmoil in the area.
The rise of the Comanche Nation and Comanchera to the east had displaced many Apache, and they took refuge here in the mountains. Tension would only increase as Western encroachment started to creep into the region by way of a transportation route.
While many of the American transcontinental routes went along the Great Platte River Road in Nebraska, there were a few exceptions. One of them was the Butterfield Overland Mail Trail, whose original route passed right through here.
In 1857, Congress awarded a contract to John Butterfield to deliver the mail across the continent. The route would travel 2,785 miles from St. Louis to San Francisco. The first stage departed on September 15, 1858, and the line would deliver the mail without fail every 2 weeks for the next 2.5 years.
For $200 a month and enough courage, the stage could get you to California in less than a month. But it wasn't a trip to be taken lightly. Passengers were expected to be armed in case any Native American or bandit attacks were encountered on the way. In addition, once you started, it was not advisable to take any breaks. You'd forfeit your spot, and you could be stranded for up to weeks until another stage came along with an empty space.
One of the stations on the original route was located near Guadalupe Peak, known as the Pinery or Pine Springs. It was the highest station along the way, with an elevation of 5,534 feet. While it started out as a rustic corral and a few tents, it quickly grew in size to include a walled enclosure containing a blacksmith, a wagon repair shop, teams of fresh horses, and several rooms with fireplaces built along the wall.
At its height, this was a place of bustling activity, not only supporting the stage, but also the people that maintained the route, and then mule trains, express riders, and other travelers coming through the area. 11 months after the route opened, though, it was shifted to the south to take better advantage of water supplies and the protection offered by Fort Stockton. Today, all that remains of the Pinery Station are these ruins here.
Even though the line folded at the start of the American Civil War, the trail continued to see regular use. Enough so that after the war was over, African American cavalry, known as Buffalo Soldiers, were deployed to the region to protect travelers and settlers from Mescalero raids.
It was an arduous and grueling assignment, with minimal supplies, scarce water, and a fierce enemy. But the soldiers persevered and accomplished their mission. Not only that, they also ended up mapping a majority of the region.
By 1869, the cavalry had destroyed several Mescalero encampments in the area in a series of brutal skirmishes. By the late 1800s, the Mescaleros had been driven out of the Guadalupe Mountains.
The memory of the mountains has stayed with the Mescalero Apache. Every year they come back to harvest and roast the mescal agave that gave them their name. With the Mescalero threat gone, several farmers and ranchers did homestead here in the 1870s. Though it was a tough life, and the area continued to remain isolated well into the 20th century.
Among the first were the Ratter brothers, who settled and built for Holy Ranch in 1876. It would later change hands several times until it was settled by the John Smith family, who operated it as an orchard from the 1916 to the early 1940s.
In its heyday, the ranch complex was the largest collection of buildings in the area, serving as the community center, the local school, and even the post office till 1942.
Today, the ranch operates as a cultural museum and interpretive center for the park, and is open from 8 to 4:30 p.m. daily.
It was the last private owners of the ranch, Judge Jesse Coleman Hunter and his son J.C. Jr., who started the push to make this area a national park, though it wasn't an easy task. Efforts in the 1920s and the 30s failed to get any real momentum.
In 1959, the effort received a major boost when another landowner, Wallace Pratt, donated over 5,000 acres of McKitterick Canyon to the National Park Service, forming the core of the park. By the 1960s, J.C. Jr. was able to fulfill the dream and sold his 67,000 acres of land to the National Park Service at the low price of $22 an acre. In 1966, President Lyndon B. Johnson signed the act establishing the park. 7 years later, Guadalupe Mountains National Park was formally opened to the public.
Nowadays, this is one of the crown jewels in the national park system. A wonderful place filled with a diverse array of flora and fauna, many natural wonders including Devil's Hall and McKitterick Canyon, and the 4 highest peaks in the state of Texas. There's over 80 miles of hiking trails that will take you through a wide array of environments. If you're coming here, it's worth spending several days. But for now, let's turn our attention to the climb. To get to the summit of Guadalupe Peak, it's a 4.2-mile hike on this trail behind me. Now the way is rugged, so good footwear is in order. Also, this peak is known for its sunniness and its windiness, so pack accordingly. And finally, here is the desert, so drink plenty of water and stay hydrated. Let's go check it out.
The well-traveled and maintained trail ascends almost 3,000 feet. The first mile and a half is the most strenuous, as you trek up a series of switchbacks. Eventually, you will reach the Ponderosa Forest. You will notice the changing environs as you climb up. The shade can be a welcome relief, though in the winter, the trail can be icy. For those who wish to overnight, there's a backcountry campground at the 3-mile mark. When you reach the bridge, you will see the summit before you. It is less than a mile to the top. There is another way to do this summit. This is Texas, so you can saddle up and ride. There are trails and hitching posts for horses. Once you reach the summit, you'll be able to take in views of El Capitan, the Sierra Diablo and Delaware mountain ranges, and the Chihuahuan Desert.
And here we are at the windy summit of Guadalupe Peak, the rooftop of Texas. Coming in at 8,749 feet, makes this the 14th highest state high point in the USA. I'm Scott Marthaler. Thanks for joining me on another episode of Rooftops of America. I'll see you soon.